Hi, my name is Lauren Penny from the Hockey Performance Academy, and today I'm going to be speaking to Cody from Namabia, who joined the Hockey Performance Academy 2 years ago. I'll be catching up with him as he shares his experiences and journey of how his hockey has developed over the last couple of years, how missing out on selection has made him a stronger player, and the lessons that he's learned playing hockey in Germany. So welcome Cody, and thanks so much for taking the time to come and have a chat today and sharing your experiences with us. So we obviously got in contact about 2 years ago, I think the first time. Maybe if you could just start by sharing a little bit about where you were in terms of your hockey, when you got in touch, how you were doing with your hockey. You were 15 back then, I think it was. So what was happening for you then?
Well, yeah, I was pretty much reaching the point where I wanted to start really focusing on developing my hockey, and that was the point in where I just started high school, where I set aside all other sports and wanted to start focusing on hockey to pursue a professional career. And at that point I felt like I had a lot to give, and I did have some potential, but I had a little bit of a fight within myself with the lack of confidence and also not knowing how to break through. So that's when I turned to the Hockey Performance Academy.
Fantastic. And so you spoke a bit there obviously about some of the mental issues, which is pretty common amongst many players. How did you know that something wasn't quite right, or maybe more a case of how did you know that something could be better?
Well, I felt like a lot of the times in the less important games or in training sessions where there was not a lot at stake, I was able to perform, and because I wasn't really worried about, I wasn't worried about performing, then I was able to do the things really well, and I was able to perform well. But then stepping into the game, and so I felt like I wasn't unlocking my full potential. Like there was a lot that I could give. So when I was alone or at training, I felt like I was really good or at the level, but then stepping onto the playing field where there's nervousness and there's the stress to perform, I started choking a bit, and that's when I realized, well, I need to get past it. It's a bit of a barrier in my way.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most important step, I think, in just realizing that, because there's a lot of players who maybe have similar problems, but they don't realize what the problem is, and they kind of blame their skills. So did you think at some point maybe it was you just not being good enough or not having the skill level, or how would you answer that?
Yeah, well, I think it was definitely a fight within myself, because I wanted to back myself and say, well, I have the skill level and I am good enough. But then again, when it came to actually showing it and doing it, I was struggling to show it. So there was a lot of doubt in myself, but also in my end. The other thing that helped me was that I was experiencing it in a lot of my other sport codes. So where I was, for example, in cricket, when we were practicing in the nets, I was able to bat really well, but when I stepped onto the cricket pitch, I was unable to do anything because I just was scared of making a mistake and didn't have confidence in myself. So when I started connecting all those dots, I felt, okay, well, there has to be another issue, because I can see that I'm good enough. So
great. Yeah. And tell me, when did things start to change for you? Was there some kind of a turning point or kind of a breakthrough moment for you?
When I think things started changing was when I rocked up at one of my club games after having been doing the program for quite a while, for about a month, and I was late for my game. I had just pitched. I wasn't able to do a pre-match routine or any of that kind of thing. I wasn't able to focus on the game. I arrived, I had to walk onto the pitch, warm up, and we played, and I probably had one of the best games that I've played in a while. And that's when I turned to the Hockey Performance Academy and to you and said, well, how do I replicate that? And that's when I had the breakthrough of not overthinking things and just reacting in the moment and having confidence in my ability.
Fantastic. And so other than obviously these mental challenges that you kind of had to break through and overcome, and obviously as we go higher there's always some kind of mental challenge that we're trying to overcome, and we've obviously spoken a couple of years ago, I think about a year ago now, What have been some of the
Yeah.
other challenges and other things that you've had to kind of break through since then as well?
One of the biggest challenges I faced was when I was part of the squad for our national men's team that was preparing for the World Cup qualifier, and I was one of the favorite youngsters to be selected for the team, and then very close. And my parents had a good relationship with the coach, and he was actually a friend. And towards the end, when he selected the team, and I wasn't selected. I in myself felt, well, because there was 2 or 3 of my friends that went on to make the team and were part of the men's team, and they're going to play at this big tournament, and I felt like, well, that was probably the biggest setback in my career, saying, well, where do I go now? I just didn't, am I good enough? What did I do wrong? And that was very difficult to get over that hill. But in the end, when I look back now, it was probably the best thing that could happen for me, because after that, when I set aside that it was a decision that the coach made and said, well, I still back myself, I still think that I should be in that team, it gave me the determination to work harder than I would have ever worked if I were, because I felt like if I would made the team, that's when I would have relaxed. But now that I didn't make it, and but I still had confidence in myself, I said, well, now I just need to, and it gave me that push to just train more, to put more effort in, to work on my mental focus. And that's when it just jumped my game 2 steps higher than what it would have been, even though I would have played in that team. So even though it was the biggest setback in my career, it probably had the most positive effect on me moving forward.
And I think that's also attribute to you, because I've seen people go through. I mean, I've been through my own setbacks myself, and it's very easy to fall victim into and blaming the reasons why we didn't make it, especially when we know that we probably were good enough. But you made that decision to step up your game and work on the things that you can control and the things that you can improve, and start to look at your game from a different perspective. So it's easy to talk about these things, it's not easy to do. So what advice would you have for other people, or what are the key things do you think that helped you through that and to overcome that?
Well, I'm not going to take all the credit. Definitely, if I had to face that setback before joining the Hockey Performance Academy, I would have definitely had a different mindset. I mean, thanks to the Hockey Performance Academy and having the one-on-one sessions with you and building the confidence in myself, I was able to also look at more the positive and was able to say, well, this happened, but how can we fix it? And thanks to the mental part and just focusing on that, because it was also with the Hockey Performance Academy that I realized how important that actually is, and that how that can make or break you becoming a really great player. So for anyone that is in my position, I would personally say, if you're leaning on the edge of whether or not to join the program, I definitely think it is worth the time and the money. If it wasn't for the Hockey Performance Academy, I would not be where I am now, and it might not have been many changes in my game, but also just a change in the way that I approach situations, and my mental strength most of all is what, and if it wasn't for my mental strength and stability in that situation, I could have at that point had given up and said, well, I'm not going to pursue it anymore because I feel like I'm not good enough. But luckily for the Hockey Performance Academy and for me developing and building that, I was able to take the positive and see what needs to be worked on and then just push through. So if you were in my situation, I would definitely recommend the program.
Fantastic, it's nice to hear always. But I think from what I'm hearing from what you're saying there as well is very often you'll get players who will look at the external things or the external problems as to, what are the skills I need to work on, and we forget to look at the internal change.
Yes. So more the physical instead of what, and I feel like when you are able to find that balance, that's when because a lot of the time it's very easy to per se control the physical because that's just something you can change, but the mental is very powerful and it actually needs a lot of work. It's not just something where you can flip a switch and it's different. And it's also the mental that has the biggest impact, whether or not you're gonna go through this problem, or you're just going to give up, because that's not really where your skills or working on anything can help you, but where you have method and mindset. So that's also where the Hockey Performance Academy helped me to realize what's important and what needs to be focused on.
Fantastic. So you've just you've come back from a great experience playing in Germany for a month, and you've shared a bit of that with me already. So
Yes.
what are the big lessons from that, and how are you going to use that going forward, obviously, to your next thing that you're working towards?
Well, for me, the biggest thing going to Germany was obviously learning new skills and techniques, and adapting to the international style of play and how they do it there. But also just, well, I learned in my program that you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but you should just be focusing on yourself and how you can develop yourself. But what the nice thing was is I went to Germany to just not compare, but to see at what level I am and at what level the kids are at my age that are playing at the highest level in Europe, and to see what needs to be done and what I have actually accomplished and what I've achieved. And yeah, just the environment and the whole international atmosphere and how they do things there really also just grew that desire for me to pursue my dream, and definitely got me a lot more interested in going to play there.
And share, if you don't mind just sharing with others, what is your dream, or what is the thing that you're working towards next?
Well, my goal, my long-term goal is to one day play at the highest professional level. So to play that is competing in the Euro Hockey League. So to play for a club that is part of the top 20 clubs in the world, and you're playing amongst the greatest players of their different nations. And yeah, so that's probably that's what I'm working for. And then also to achieve the highest worth my age and worth country, and to hopefully one day compete at the Olympics and to just take part at the highest stage.
So hopefully we'll see you either in the Namibian colours or obviously playing in the Euro Hockey League. Finally, what advice would you give to anyone who was maybe in a similar situation as you, who's maybe thinking about taking their hockey a little bit more seriously, or taking it a bit further? Maybe they're in the same situation that you were, lacking a bit of confidence or doubting yourself. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think first of all, you need to get a plan. You need to decide, you need to sit down with yourself and say, well, what is my long-term goals and what do I want to achieve in the long run? But then what do I need to do to get there? So then start setting short goals for yourself that you can gradually start building yourself towards that long-term goal. And then getting the tools you need, which the Hockey Performance Academy provides, to achieve those short-term goals, like improving or some tactical skills that you need to improve, or building your confidence in my case. So bring barrier, especially when you're in a situation where you feel like you can get there, but there's something lacking. So you need to then sit down and figure out what you need. But then most of all, to not forget that you're always just playing a game that you love, and that you need to never overthink anything and just focus on what you can control, and just always acting in the moment and having fun.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure many of those who are watching are also inspired by your story, and we'll be following you and your progress as well. So thanks again.